The novel coronavirus that has infected millions and killed hundreds of thousands across the globe has sent Sino-American ties tumbling since the start of 2020. Recriminations over the coronavirus outbreak that was first reported in central China are continuing in full force, spilling over to other points of contention between the two sides. On Sunday, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said some political figures in the United States are taking the bilateral ties hostage and pushing the two countries to the brink of a new Cold War. U.S. President Donald Trump and members of his administration have been accusing China of a lack of transparency over the outbreak, an allegation that Beijing has strongly dismissed. Some observers believe the accusations are attempts by the Trump administration to divert attention from shortcomings in the U.S. response to the pandemic, given that America is the world's worst-hit country, both in terms of the number of infections and fatalities.
I think that the solution is not very satisfactory, and then the Trump administration, of course, feels increasing pressure and is resorting to a kind of smear tactics to divert attention against China in this context of 360 days pushback against China, which has been going on even before the coronavirus crisis happened.
The growing frictions have been manifested in a series of tit-for-tat measures involving Chinese and American journalists in recent months. In February, China deported 3 reporters from the Wall Street Journal after the newspaper ran a headline about China's coronavirus response, which Beijing objected to as being racist. Last week, the U.S. Homeland Security issued a new regulation that limits visas for Chinese journalists to a maximum 90-day stay. China has slammed the U.S. move as a political crackdown on the media. The United States and China signed a trade agreement in January, raising hopes of closer bilateral operations between the two sides. Under the deal, Beijing agreed to import an additional $200 billion worth of U.S. goods and services. But the pandemic has impacted China's ability to purchase the promised amount. The U.S. stance on China hasn't been conciliatory. Last week, Donald Trump said in an interview that he is not interested in talking with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. He added that Washington can cut all ties with Beijing and save billions of dollars as a result. The U.S. presidential campaigns are gaining momentum ahead of the November election. In the meantime, Trump's anti-China stance can be a viable strategy to garner voter support. According to a recent study, 66% of Americans expressed an unfavorable opinion of China, up from 48% in 2018. Trump's campaign is now focused on attacking Democratic candidate Joe Biden, who is often being described as soft on China.
Whosoever is in the White House in future, I think that this 360 degrees pushback against China is going to continue. So I think this is the typical classical clash between rival superpowers. That's the background. But of course, the coronavirus and then the coming US election sort of accentuates this conflict.
The outlook for a thaw in Washington-Beijing relations is not optimistic, not at least in the near future. The race for developing a vaccine for COVID-19 indicates that the world should expect months of a broader competition between two of its biggest economies.